It's an extraordinary case. I mean, we have to be a little bit careful, David, because the man has been arrested and an investigation is going on. So we have to be just a little bit aware of that. But if the facts that are reported first by The Sun are correct, it would appear to be extraordinary how anyone could escape the sort of checks that you would have thought would have to be the most rigorous checks to work for Border Force. And immigration checks, you would have thought, would be absolutely top of their list. Just to provide a bit of background about this, this was an investigation conducted by the Home Office's Anti-Corruption Command. They were focusing on Western jet foil. That's the sort of base where people who come across the channel in small boats are taken to initially for the first stage of the processing. That's the migration centre in Dover. This individual was one of 4 Home Office staff who were arrested 3 weeks ago. They were arrested on suspicion of misconduct and conspiracy to steal as part of a wide-ranging investigation. And then it emerged that one of the individuals had in fact been arrested previously for the immigration offences which you have outlined just a couple of moments ago.
I mean, it really is extraordinary, and it goes back to the question I asked yesterday, given Border Force are on strike, and the armed forces are doing a sterling job at the airports. And I asked yesterday, and I asked the great British public, who would you prefer to man the borders? Would you prefer the armed forces, or would you prefer Border Force? And overwhelmingly, guess what they said? The armed forces. And so these sort of stories are really not going to help in terms of the public actually having confidence in the Border Force.
Yes, and I suppose you do have to wonder, is it just a coincidence that this story has emerged in the papers right in the middle of a strike, which has become very politicised?
Oh, that's good.
We talked about this.
Sorry, carry on.
Yep, absolutely. You know, whether the government is, you know, managing to sort of...
So you're saying the government may be briefing against Border Force? Just as Border Force was briefing against the government yesterday, saying the borders are porous?
I'm sure there's always some briefing going on in a situation like this, where you have got 1,000 members of the PCS union on strike at 6 airports in the port of New Haven. The strike's still going on at the moment. You know, in that situation, you have intense focus on Border Force, what their officials are like, and I think it would be some coincidence if this story just emerged right in the middle of it by happenstance. So I think there may have been a bit of briefing going on, particularly given the fact that these arrests came some 3 weeks ago. I
mean, it's extraordinary. Let's bring in the barrister.
Oh,
what
absolutely.
do you make of this?
Well, I think you're right. And this has been a theme, hasn't it, about question everything. And you've got to work out the timing.
Yeah.
That's what Vivian would say. You always question everything. Don't accept your first thing. But Danny's right. You have to also remember that it's innocent until proven guilty. So go through the process and see if that's right. If it is right, then obviously it's of concern. What you have to ask is, why is it coming out now? And I think absolutely one conclusion could be that people are briefing these sort of stories in the same way as we've got other stories about the army being far more efficient and so on and so forth.
Well, that's what people have said.
Yes.
I mean, that is the extraordinary thing, Danny, that people have said, and I was talking to Simon Calder yesterday, and also many people coming back into the country, saying they literally skipped through the borders, they had a lovely time, and many people then messaged to say, can we have the armed forces the whole time?
But is that because the army, as we're being told, or some members of the armed forces personnel are not permitted to carry out all the security checks?
Well, I got to the bottom of that yesterday.
There we go. Let's clarify this.
No, well, so I got to the bottom of this yesterday. If the armed forces suspect someone, they themselves cannot detain someone under an IS-81. However, there are Border Force officials there, so they go to them, they issue the IS-81, and so therefore they're not actually circumventing those checks.
Yes, well, that could be the case. I mean, the other...
Well, it is the case, is what they're saying, isn't it?
That is what I heard from a retired colonel yesterday.
We have to dispel these myths. Can you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth. So I think the reality, if it's an issue, let's address it. If it's not, and you've got the answer to that, let's not keep peddling the misinformation.
I mean, Danny, it makes the other interesting point that came out yesterday was that when you compare us with other European countries, many of them use armed forces at the borders. Do you think there is an appetite amongst the public to actually beef up the Border Force by using members of the armed forces permanently?
I am sure members of the public, I mean, I myself, would be great to see, you know, a soldier at the border processing your papers. and providing that reassurance that, you know, someone in uniform does provide. However, I don't think that the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, would be happy if the men and women of the Army, Navy and the Air Force were stuck at passport control. That's not really what they're being trained to do.
No, I think you have a very fair point indeed. Danny, thank you very much indeed for your time. That's Danny Shaw, who's home.